This is episode 606 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, it's another week, another report indicating that things are not well in the state of New Mexico when it comes to various public policies. And most of what we're going to talk about in this report does revolve around public policy, although, some of them, there's open questions as to how much New Mexico's elected officials can actually change. But I think the U.S. News and World Report Best States report, New Mexico ranks 49th, beating out only Louisiana. We do not do particularly well as a state in this report. The lowlights are education, kind of a evergreen thing there, 50th in education. So that's dead last because they only do 50 states. So thankfully we're not 51st or 52nd. Crime and corrections, 48th, no surprise there. Economy, 45th. Infrastructure, 44th. Healthcare, 38th. Opportunity, 36th. Natural environment, 32nd. Fiscal stability, 33rd. And that all adds up to New Mexico being 49th in the nation in the Best States report. I mentioned Louisiana's last. Real quickly, Utah is numero uno with New Hampshire, Nebraska, Minnesota, Idaho, Iowa, Vermont, Washington State, Florida, and Massachusetts rounding out the top 10.
Paul, there's only one of those that intuitively I will take exception to is kind of the natural. We get marked down for some things that on those typically air particulates, i.e. dust. We're in the desert. The wind is blown here and dust comes up. Ozone, we're high elevation where ozone easily forms, particularly with sagebrush and other things, much less any industrial activity.
Quick aside there, which is why the environmentalists constantly claim that New Mexico has all of these air quality issues. They automatically, of course, pin the blame on the oil and gas industry, when in reality, the elevation issue inherently causes that, with a lot of sunlight we get, causes the ozone problem.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if you're in the southeast, there's certainly industry can contribute to some of those issues. But let's call it like it is. The prevailing winds in a place like Albuquerque and Santa Fe, the air, I would say, one day a year would make it from southeast New Mexico to Albuquerque and Santa Fe. It almost is always blowing the other way. And so we need to blame those evil Arizonans for all of our problems. And, if you look back just at the worst air quality we've had over the past decade, it's been from forest fires in California and Arizona have gotten the greater Albuquerque area. But you're exactly right. So, it's one of those... here's the thing: if you have to explain it that much, it's probably not going to make it into the consciousness of other states. But we know there are reasons for that, but that doesn't mean we need to shut down the economy, because even if we did, the wind's going to blow and there's going to be dust.
Absolutely. And we really can't do a lot about some of those dust and environmental related issues. It's just it's part of our geography, and I think most people, gosh, I would have to say that if you surveyed New Mexicans on the natural environment, that they would very rarely say that it is a hindrance into their lifestyle. Like most people, when they think of New Mexico, outside of balloon fiesta, corrupt politicians, poverty, crappy education, they're going to say natural environment is absolutely one of the draws of New Mexico.
Yeah, and make no mistake, it is few and far between that somebody says, "Boy, I love the spring winds in New Mexico." But having said that, that seems like a small price to pay for the onerous humidity of places like Texas, the South, and others. So yeah, I think you're right on with that, Paul.
Yeah, I don't require quite that much scientific analysis on that one. There's a lot of things that we can really dive into the numbers on, but I think it's safe to say that if you take away our natural advantages, I mean, I may be wrong, but I think they have something relating to how far away you are from a beach, and that's obviously not something New
Oh,
Mexico is going to perform well
yeah.
on.
Oh, but and just to that, it's like, okay, how far away are you from a mountain? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
I usually don't criticize our guests to the east over there in Texas, but as they say, if God would have wanted Texans to ski, He would have given them a mountain. So,
Exactly. So it is, obviously the important things, the top lines, the economy, the education system, the crime. Those are all things that we have those are all public policy issues. Yes, we can say that there are unique challenges culturally here in New Mexico that result in greater crime. You could argue that the border is the issue. I don't actually concur with that. I don't think the border itself is much of a hindrance to New Mexico being a safe state. It's much more about what we do with people once they are kind of falling into the criminal justice system in the way that it performs. As an example, I went back and found previous best states reports from U.S. News and World Report, and they don't seem to have them published online going way back. But I found 2019, which of course is the first year that Governor Lujan Grisham was in office, and back in 2019, infrastructure. Now we mentioned infrastructure ranked 44th, not great. In 2019, infrastructure we were 17th. And I think it is safe to say, in my own personal experience, that while New Mexico always has had its challenges with maintaining the roads and the sun and the winters do have an impact on those roads, I think that infrastructure has notably deteriorated across our state. And we hear, of course, and we've talked about I-40 and other issues, but it does seem that with all the money flowing into this state from oil and gas, that as a bare minimum, we should have some top-notch infrastructure, but uh, that's not really the case.
yeah, it is certainly not. And it used to be that they would talk about infrastructure in terms of roads being primary, and it seems like our infrastructure must be being spent on something else because the roads are not doing well right now here in our state.
Well, they're also dealing with fun things like Davis-Bacon rules and environmental permitting, et cetera, et cetera. So uh, one thing, changing gears here, that mentioned all the money flowing in from oil and gas. Well, one of the places it is flowing into without much effect is the education system, specifically K-12. The Institute of Education Sciences put forth a report, and this is kind of this is the report when it comes to education funding and how much is available in terms of resources for the education systems across the United States. Now, caveat, it is fiscal year 2022 data, which in my world is basically ancient history. Fiscal year 2022, just to give you an idea, here we are in mid-May, and we are coming close to the end of fiscal year 2024. So we're talking about data that's almost 3 years old, reality-wise, and that means that New Mexico is going to, because we've spent a lot more money in recent years, that we're going to look a little more frugal than we are. But you take this data and you see that New Mexico has $16,900 per student in K-12 in that fiscal year. Colorado 16,375, Texas 14,654 or 656, Arizona 13,140, Oklahoma 12,758, $12,000 758, and Utah 11,602. So New Mexico surpasses each of our neighbors, and most of them quite significantly when it comes to education resources, and we're not getting the results. But I thought that information was very interesting, and we've been kind of duking it out, if you will, with Colorado in terms of per pupil spending in recent years. I suspect that with the flood of revenues and the fact that Colorado, while a blue state, has to still kind of adhere to the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, that New Mexico is going to surpass Colorado by significant numbers in the next several years.
Yeah, when we look at this data, it is very interesting. There's been plans put forward by other states that have dramatically improved their education. New Mexico has not. And right now, it just doesn't seem like there's even a high level strategic plan to get back there. So it's always, we're focused on the inputs, not on the outputs of quality of education. And I just don't know. I would like to see a little more study with regard to why we think education isn't working and maybe try to solve that. I have one that has just recently come to mind with me. It's the amount of time that we spend in classroom. And I know you have some data that I found fascinating. I will not steal your thunder any more than I just did. But the quality time in the classroom, is there something that is hindering that in New Mexico? So is it how prepared our students are when they come here? But the point that I'd like to see studied, just because this one's come up several times for me in the past few months, if I have talked to teachers that have left the profession that, by my estimation, are very intelligent, smart. It's like, whoa, they'd be awesome teachers. And they're like, it's just not worth it. And a lot of it has to do with discipline in the classroom and the fact that they spend all their time basically being a cop, getting the unruly students to try to behave themselves with limited success, while the other, and let's just say it's two or three on average, according to these teachers, and the rest of the students suffer tremendously because of it. Is that a big thing in New Mexico? I don't know. But again, we're notoriously uncurious about causes here in our state.
Yeah, or whether money spent on X, Y, and Z is actually improving X,
Right.
Y, and Z. And the Legislative Finance Committee has at least dipped its toe into that pool, saying, a lot of the money we spend on welfare and education, et cetera, not really resulting in better outcomes. Uh, boy, uh, Wally, you know, we do focus in education on a lot of the problems uh, associated with the education system, and it's pretty straightforward where we're coming from. I am a choice proponent. I believe that parents and families should be empowered to use the resources that government currently spends to educate their children. Maybe not 100% of those dollars, maybe not handing out 16 grand per student if you're homeschooling them, but some amount of those resources. And 16 grand, uh, my children go to a Catholic school in downtown Albuquerque. I can tell you the tuition is not even a fraction. It's less than half, well less than half of 16 grand. So we can do a lot with that money. That would be my honest preference, with the close seconds best being some variation of the Mississippi Miracle, where essentially they brought forth and actually did what Susana Martinez attempted to do, where really resources were focused on early childhood reading and accountability was required. I, at a social function, spoke to a principal at a school, a high performing school, but she was decrying some of the ways in which our education system is simply not incentivized. And it was APS. It's somebody who uh, knows of what she speaks, and really just a lot of frustration on her part. And we need to do more than just pour additional resources into the education system. And I've seen these billboards across town, as you probably have as well. Sign up for the summer reading program.
Mhm.
Now, like so much of what our education system does, first and foremost, look, I don't know what the cost is offhand, but uh, if it does get kids to do something productive during the summer and continue to hone their skills, I'm fine with it. I really am. In the grand scheme of things, it is a fraction of what we spend on education. But shouldn't they be learning how to read year round? And shouldn't we be educating parents and really focusing on getting parents to encourage their children to read? And possibly even if they need to learn to read themselves, I know there are programs for that as well. But you don't need a reading parent to be there encouraging your children. There's plenty of technological things online that can be used. Uh, we're spending kids 9 months out of the year. They should be able to read with that time frame, and it just strikes me as yet another band-aid. And who is going to take advantage of this opportunity? Well, you're going to have two groups of people. One is the true believers, the parents who want their kid to succeed and do well and learn to read, and they're probably already learning to read and doing all the right things. But hey, why not spend a little more time doing that? Or the parents looking for free babysitting for their kids for the summer, and there you go. Now they have something that they can stick their kids in, whether they're serious about it or whether they're going to really take advantage of it or not.
Well, and you danced around a few things. It's like the role that parents play in education, and I do think if we look once we go to the international numbers, I think that has something to do with it. And I don't know. My mother was a grade school teacher and a principal. I guess I learned to read early. I think they may have done some things right in our family, but it's one of those things. I do think some parents don't value education. I
Hmm.
think there's very little probably that can be done to help their children from a parental point of view. But maybe there's some parents out there that with a program, how to help your child succeed in school or something like that. There could be some good that would come from that. Maybe the unions wouldn't like it because that would take money against away from their union members, but again, what should we do? What should we do? And we need to do something because we are just hurting the economic future of our state, and we're certainly hurting the economic future of several generations in New Mexico from an education point of view. And the time to really turn that around is now. Nothing like starting from the bottom, and that's where we are. So.
Exactly. Continuing with the education theme, and Wally's been already teasing this one, and it is kind of something that you just you don't find stuff out until you actually do the research.
Well, and
And
this is Paul, things that make you go,
exactly. So I been still continuing, including front page of today's at least Albuquerque Journal, because there was a hearing recently about the 5-day versus 4-day school week. Uh, so, quick backstory here. Of course, in 2023, the legislature adopted a enhanced requirement to make sure that New Mexico students spent 1,140 hours in school learning annually. So I went and I was wondering, well, okay, quick backtrack. There was a journal, Albuquerque Journal op-ed by Bernalillo school superintendent, the superintendent who I joke that he is only the second known person who supports the governor's 180 school day mandate. And he argued in that the reality is, these are direct quotes from his op-ed, the reality is that our students desperately need more high quality instructional time in the classroom. New Mexico's students lag far behind their peers in almost every other state in the summer number of days they spend in school. And that last sentence really got me because I said, well, time to put on your research hat there, Paul, and find out, is this indeed the case? And it turns out that it is absolutely not the case. So I could go through all 49 other states beside New Mexico, but we don't have time for that. I went to the Education Commission of the states. You can find this post at Heirs of Enchantment, including the link to my resource there, where they do lay out what all the different states require kids to spend in school. Now, quick caveat, because New Mexico passed this in 2023, it is not included. So it looks like we're at a lower level, 1080 in terms of day hours in school. We're not. We've obviously changed the law. It's 1140. I don't think many states have changed the amount of time their kids spend in the classroom in that intervening time frame like New Mexico. But here we go. Arizona. I won't belabor the point, but there's different levels for different grades. The max for 4 to 8, the maximum time required in the classroom, 890 hours in the great state of Arizona. Colorado, 6 to 12, those grades spend the maximum time in the classroom in Colorado at 1,080 hours. Oklahoma, 1,080 hours. Texas, they got to be different because everything's different in Texas. They do it in minutes. So 75,600 minutes in the classroom. Well, I was able to do the math.
Divide by 60.
Yeah.
I believe is the formula.
Spent enough time in the classroom for that one. 1,260 hours. Ironically, Texas is one of the few states I found. In fact, I only found Texas and one other state that have higher requirements than New Mexico. Utah, 990 hours. Maryland is the only other state beside Texas that has more requirements of time in the classroom. And it's just for public high schools. That is 1,170 hours. So you think Texas and Maryland, about the most polar opposite states culturally, politically, and those are two of the states that spend the most time in the classroom, or more time in the classroom than New Mexico under this new requirement.
Well, and I want to say that based on my personal experience, and I do not believe this has changed in the modern era of education. You know, we had those papyrus that we used to write back in the old days, but I don't believe that all hours are created equally. And that's kind of another tie in with that discipline and classroom management thing. Just thinking back, I had some teachers, Paul, that, man, if there was an hour on the books, you learned for an hour. The minute you got in, they were like the strictest on tardies. Not that they like to necessarily do that, but tardies kept the whole class from learning. So you knew you better not be tardy in their room, and they taught to the very end. And to do that, I know they had to prepare, because the teachers that didn't prepare, take them 10 minutes to get started. It'd take them 10 minutes at the end to wrap things up. Well, you know, in a 55-minute class, that's about a third. That's getting close to a quarter to a third of the time. So yeah, there is much that can be done, but again, it's the thing. If you're not doing that much work in your class, is having more hours of not doing that much really going to help, as opposed to maybe have a little more intensity? And how do we do that? And I do think it's back to the quality of the teacher, the management of the classroom, and man, every minute you spend on discipline or something else is something you're not spending, doing education.
Yeah, and that was part one of this little post. The ironic thing, the second component is, I thought, well, uh, we're here in New Mexico. We oftentimes, because New Mexico, uh, does not do particularly well on interstate comparisons. What do we think about, however, international comparisons? And I think it's safe to say that United States, generally speaking, on education does not perform particularly well across international standards in academic performance. And I thought, well, gee, let's take a look at those numbers as well. So I found a fascinating chart, and I believe the source of this ultimately is the National Education Association, uh, which found that U.S. students actually spends more than most other nations in the classroom. Now, Chile is an outlier. They are 1,129 hours annually in the classroom. Chile is a great country and very successful in Latin America. That is quite a bit of time, and like I said, an outlier. United States average. So this kind of just reinforces the data I just shared. 981 hours in the classroom. So by that metric, New Mexico's students are spending, I mean, we're talking close to 20% more time in the classroom than the average American student. Uh, if this is going to make a difference, you would think it would be something quite dramatic and quite quick that we would see that change happening here in New Mexico. Australia, 821 hours. Germany, 752. England, 745. Japan, 608. Those smarty pants Japanese kids spend barely half as much time in the classroom as New Mexico kids. Finland, one of the highest performers in a lot of these international indices, 592, with the OECD average. That is kind of a proxy for industrialized nations. 694 hours in the classroom annually. Now, this is where you get into controversy, you get into culture, you get into what is considered the role of the education system versus the family members, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could spend the rest of this time together talking about this issue alone. However, I think it is safe to say that more hours in the classroom is by no means a silver bullet
In and of itself.
in and of itself.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And yeah, and heaven forbid the data shows that.
Yeah. So take that for what it's worth. And I've sent it to the relevant entities, not the lawyers themselves, because I don't know all the lawyers representing the districts in the case as it moves forward. But boy, I hope that they are using some of that information to make the case against this mandate, the governor's 5-day-a-week mandate. And of course, just to recall, the governor is not requiring anything above and beyond the 1,140 hours. She is simply saying that has to happen over the span of 180 days, not whatever the districts decide, especially as they compress that in. I do understand that I want to say maybe Cimarron, some district in the northern part of the state has been doing 4-day weeks for 50 years. I just found that out. So clearly, the governor has all the answers, and she needs to impose her will on districts that have been doing 4-day school weeks for 50 years. So it is what it is, folks. Moving on. Wallethub, another great report from Wallethub. New Mexico is the 46th best state for doctors. And they go through a lot of variables. Most of these variables are things directly relating to the medical field, things like competition for doctors, things like medical malpractice insurance for doctors. Uh, I think it's a reasonable representation. I only really cite these Wallethub reports when I think they are generally on target. Arizona ranks 25th, Colorado's 21st, Texas is 17th, Oklahoma 15th, Utah 4th. Uh, and that right there indicates, we're going to struggle. Even if you're saying Dr. McGee is looking at moving to the Southwest where they like to hike and enjoy sunshine, uh, they have other options that are much more attractive than New Mexico. And that doesn't factor in things like uh, not really directly taxes. New Mexico, obviously, with our taxes, is relatively high compared to a lot of other states, especially on personal income. We don't have a great education system. See previous discussion. That's going to scare some doctors away. Of course, crime is another factor there. So we're going to further have problems, and all that comes together to really reinforce what I think is a fair rating at 46th in terms of doctors and attractiveness to doctors. Montana again having a great day. Number one, Hawaii, ironically, 51st, and that's got to be 100% regulation. Regulations and their lack of friendliness to doctors because. May not be a permanent thing, but gosh, I can imagine being a doctor out in Hawaii. It sounds like a fun gig.
Yeah, I would think a tour of duty of 3, 4, 5 years in
Yeah.
Hawaii would not be a bad thing for many people. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I think this all goes to show that we're going to continue to struggle until and unless some combination of the legislature and a future governor decide that really making a dent in the doctor shortage is a top priority. I think it is safe to say that in 2023, several things were done that ameliorated the kind of crisis aspect of the shortage, but that's another fun feature of New Mexico politics is that we're only going to do the business-friendly thing once the gun is at the head. There's no vision of, we have this challenge in this state, and maybe we should factor in some things and make changes right away rather than waiting for the doctors to threaten to all leave.
Yes, and Paul, I think the big four: crime, healthcare, taxes, and education. We're not doing well on any of them, and the NBA playoffs are right now, and we're kind of 3 games to 0 at this point on all of the biggies. Uh, if one of these was strong, we could build upon it and kind of move out into the others. But we're going to have to do something on one of these aspects, or the state's prospects are not real strong. And it is interesting, the thing that one of the things that's the biggest opportunity, which is the fact that there's a lot of money, if it's poorly spent, just means that will maybe take us in the wrong direction at a faster clip if something doesn't change.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of different factors. New Mexico is a dispersed, widely spread out state, which makes practicing medicine a little more difficult. It's easier to have a critical mass of people. We have a lot of Medicaid dependency, which is not attractive either. That is largely a self-inflicted wound, especially in today's environment where we have the oil and gas money, where we have the opportunity to really push for more economic prosperity. It's not going to happen overnight if we embark upon positive economic and tax reform, but it would be an indicator there that New Mexico's serious. We're clearly not serious as a state right now. So there's a lot of factors that are kind of side issues or around the issue of medical providers, not necessarily included in this report, but that's no report is going to have a 100% 360-degree view of all the critical issues in a given field. They're going to have to limit those variables at some point And I think 46 is a fair representation of where we are. Um, Now, Wally, I don't think you were up in Farmington when the governor was up there, close to a month ago now. But a little birdie told me who was in the room, and the governor was there. And this is not a gotcha like the recorded conversation. This is merely the governor saying what we actually already believe and understand to be the case. But when it comes from the governor's mouth, it does make a little bit of a difference because she's not the great friend of the oil and gas industry that we may be ascribed to being. Well, the governor told a audience in Farmington in a speech that was not recorded that the oil and gas boom is going to continue for another 5 years at least. That is the basics of the quote. Now,
Until it's phased out completely.
well, I think the governor, that it is an admission in the sense that she would very much like to see something else replace oil and gas. What that something else means, we have no idea because I don't think it's really out there. Uh, and I think it's open to question what exactly she is saying. Are we going to see, for those who are not watching, this, which is a largely, the hockey stick model of where oil and gas is going in New Mexico, which is dramatic increases in production, or maybe we'll see more of a leveling out at these very elevated levels of production that we have seen for several years now. Even if it levels out,
Or it goes down 20%. It's still at a hugely,
exactly,
from a historical basis, a huge local high.
and
So
we are going to have this money available to us, and we're going to have policymakers in Santa Fe, the legislature and the governor, empowered to make dramatic improvements in our economic and business climate if they only choose to do it. And that is the rub. The governor shows no inclination to really overhaul New Mexico's economy. She's at best nibbled along the edges with a few small tax reductions, but nobody's talking about the kind of bold reforms that we could and should be embracing, especially given that she's basically contradicting a lot of the so-called experts and consultants that the legislature's been relying on, who seem to be instilling fear and ignorance into them, saying, oh, we're going to hit the end and we're going to hit the wall and it's going to be ugly and our budget's going to be shot, this, that, and the other. None of that's the case. Yes, we could enter a global depression tomorrow and oil production and oil consumption plummets, but unless that happens, we are going to be in this boom for the foreseeable future, realistically.
well, yeah, unless that happens, unless it's permanent, which
True.
is unlikely. The first one, maybe not that unlikely, but that it's permanent, that's what the big key is. And so here's my take, Paul. The big four, we got to deal with one of them. And which would be the most impactful to build upon the others? Crime, healthcare, taxes, or education? I have my own choice. And again, I'm not saying this is right. We ought to be able to maybe walk and chew gum and work on all four at the same time, but we don't seem to be able to do that. And I do personally happen to think the one that may be the most impactful is crime because it impacts all of the other ones. Crime hurts education, crime hurts healthcare, crime hurts government spending, which creates more taxes. And if we'd make a little progress on that, and it's like, whoa, New Mexico's struggling with a few things, but man, that's a safe place to live. That could do a lot for us, but we'll see. Guess what? We have a special session on, you guessed it, crime. So we'll see if there's any meaningful policies that come out of that. So
Yeah, so far, not looking
not
particularly
looking for,
impactful.
yeah, that's the word, impactful. Will they pass something? I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So, yeah, the oil and gas boom likely to continue, and even the governor says 5 years. Even though, as I'm throwing us into the Wayback Machine here, when she sat down with Politico, I don't know, it was close to a year ago, and she said, New Mexico's not really an energy state. She made that statement, which is just completely unrealistic. But
No, if we weren't an energy state, we'd probably be racing Wyoming and North Dakota for the smallest states population-wise in the country. I would think.
yeah, and we'd be firmly in dead last in the poverty
Yeah.
statistic. All right. Well, uh, a controversy that has generated a fair amount of attention here in the Albuquerque area is actually not with the Albuquerque political scenario, so to speak. Normally, we're complaining about Tim Keller's latest antics or the city council or Bernalillo County Commission, but actually, this is Sandoval County. Rio Rancho, of course, is in Sandoval County, and I think they're the most impacted area of our of the county because most of the economic activity that happens in Sandoval happens in Rio Rancho. They have seen some very steep increases in assessments thanks to their assessor, Linda Gallegos, a Democrat who has come along and basically said that a lot of these commercial establishments in Sandoval County are underassessed. For example, the parking lot at Turtle Mountain Brewery, fine establishment there in Rio Rancho, went from $51,024 in 2023 to $324,608 in 24. That is a 536% increase over the previous year. Elevate Trampoline Park saw its property value spike from 1.3 million in 23 to 6.6 million this year. There's a few others, but you get the idea. A lot of commercial property owners in Rio Rancho and Sandoval County are seeing massive increases in their valuations. Now, I suppose it's theoretical that those kind of valuations could actually be, those changes could happen in a extremely fast growing economy and area, but it's safe to say that the assessor has either been undervaluing them for years and is trying to catch up in a very rapid fashion, or has just decided that it's time to sock it to the commercial real estate people. And, I hate to say it, but, you get down to and I get it. Look, the assessor is there for commercial, therefore residential. Most people do not perceive themselves as being impacted by the commercial, although they will if their favorite restaurant or favorite hangout, Turtle Mountain being among them, would somehow have to go out of business because of these property tax assessments. But who you vote for in these down ballot races matters, and the idea that you just see a D in a slot and pull the lever for them or vote for them in the circle, I think you need to actually really understand what the philosophy of these people are. And this assessor is really socking it to these commercial folks. And I understand she's term limited out after another couple years. And we may see a little more controversy and more attention paid to the county assessor in Sandoval County after this little debacle.
Yeah, and Paul, over the years, both Rio Rancho and Sandoval County, any discussions I've had with elected or business leaders in the community is them decrying the amount of commercial activity. It just hurts them, people driving down the hill to shop in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County as opposed to Sandoval County and Rio Rancho. And it just seems like they started to make some progress, turning where they're getting more commercial activity in their area, and then this could bring it to if not a screeching halt, a dramatic slowdown. So it is interesting. That whole idea that a lot of D's have is that taxes in and of themselves are a good thing, and maybe that's what's happening here. I don't know, but this will be an interesting one to watch because people felt like Rio Rancho and Sandoval County were a bit of a safe haven from craziness when it came to cost of doing business, and that may not be the case anymore.
Yeah, there are no safe havens if you elect the same people as places like Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, and heaven forbid Santa Fe. Although You don't hear much about Santa Fe in this regard. I don't know. Maybe it's because their home values and business values. Santa Fe property is so expensive to begin with. They don't have to adjust these rates. It also seemed to be a question of, what is the Sandoval County financial situation looking like? Because, if they were in a sudden financial pinch, you could see trying to, get some more money flowing into the county through jacking up assessments. But I've not heard anything about that.
No, and keep in mind, even if they raise the assessments and they're collecting too much money, they could reduce the rate. That is not.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
is not against the rules. So
No, I know. Shocker.
it's against common practice, however.
Yes. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.